Welcome to this week's Rural School Advocates of Iowa Capital Recap video. I'm Margaret Buckton, your RSAI professional advocate. In today's video, we're going to talk about the state budget progress, including the Education Appropriations Bill. Charter schools was passed by the House today and amended pretty significantly. Other floor action this week, and what's next, the property tax reform proposals and unspent authorized budget. And then we'll finish up with some advocacy actions for the week. Well, the state budget bill status as of this morning from the Iowa Legislative News Service shows lots of progress. The House Appropriations Committee moved 5 budget bills to the calendar. The Senate had 2 more on their agenda for this afternoon, and the House had 2 on their agenda for this afternoon. So as this table fills itself in, those columns over to the right, we get closer and closer to adjournment. One of the bills that was considered today in education is the Education Appropriations Bill. It moved in the House Appropriations Committee. So the subcommittee got it done on Wednesday. The Appropriations Committee amended it this afternoon. This is not the biggest part of school funding. It's not the foundation formula, but it does fund the programs of the department, community colleges, regents, universities, tuition assistance, and other things. Now, in the governor's budget, most of the governor's budget line items were recommended to be status quo funding. Next year, fiscal 27, the same as fiscal 26. That was replicated in the House version in House Study Bill 778. Hardly any changes, but the things that are different. The House bill puts $92,000 more into the Teach Iowa Loan Forgiveness Program. They put $3 million into a University of Iowa Children's Cancer Research Fund. They include the specific allocations out of the Student Achievement Teacher Quality Act, the things like the Iowa Teacher of the Year, the regional academies, teacher academies for professional development, those kinds of specific allocations that were left out of the governor's bill. Now, one of the divisions in the bill we had particularly advocated for was the Dropout Prevention Annual Board Approval. They left the first part of that in the bill as it was amended in the Appropriations Committee, but they took out the look back that would have required the School Budget Review Committee to reverse their action on Cedar Rapids' $18 million. So we'll have some more work to do to get that corrected. They also made a correction to the actual enrollment needed for the second count date. So that bill will move to the House calendar. It will be further amended, I'm sure, and then go over to the Senate, where we'll have another chance at it there, too. Now, the charter school bill passed the House this afternoon. It's House File 2754. It was heavily amended. The amendment added the University of Northern Iowa as another authorizer of charter schools, so that's in addition to the State Board of Education. Of course, they could not just authorize new ones, they could extend or cancel existing charter contracts, too. The financial implications of this bill we've been talking about all session. Teacher salary supplement, the media and education services per pupil amounts would be required to accompany the student to the charter school. In the cases of the media and ed services, they also require the AEAs to provide those services to the charter school students. The public district is required to provide services to the charter schools, too. Extracurricular activities and other activities like band and theater. Driver's ed, this one in particular, though, the bill does require the charter school to pay for the course, but they don't require them to pay for the senior year plus, the concurrent enrollment college credit courses or advanced placement. So those kinds of things will actually cost public schools more money than they get to provide those services. The amendment changed preschool. So instead of the original idea of a forced 2080 agreement between the public school and a private community-based provider, instead the community-based provider will apply directly to the department to offer their preschool program. It's a little better. It's still not great. The funding for the initial year of the application would be provided up front. That doesn't happen for public schools. If you want to have an increase in sections, you have to fund that out of your last year's enrollment. But going forward, it would count enrollment through the formula the same way it does for public preschool programs. And then the amendment did something else that was never in the bill. It removed current law restrictions on homeschool. So in the current law, homeschool is not allowed to be provided to more than 4 unrelated children. So, of course, all of a parent's own children they could educate in homeschool, but not more than 4 unrelated children. They're prohibited from charging tuition or fees for homeschool now. The bill repeals both of those, so there'd be no limit on the number of kids, and they would be able to charge tuition and fees. The bill was approved 54 to 34, sent over to the Senate. It will be attached to Senate File 2425 on the Senate calendar. Other floor action this week, the department's bill on talented and gifted advanced pathways and accelerated learning. The Senate concurred with the House amendment. The House amendment did improve the bill by delaying implementation and allowed more district discretion on determining student readiness and likelihood of success if they are accelerated. That sends that bill to the governor. House File 2670 deals with summative testing. It adds social studies, a state test requirement in grades 8 and 11. It moves the science state test from 10th to 11th grade. There are other provisions in there, some we don't care for too much, so read the weekly report on that. But the bill was amended and approved, sending it back to the House. Senate File 2320, concurrent enrollment modality. This requires that a student take a community college course in person unless the superintendent or their designee allows them to take it online. It was passed 91-2, sending it to the governor. House File 2591 on athletic eligibility would require a student who transfers or open enrolls into another school to wait 140 calendar days before they participate in varsity athletics. It would require the department to have rules. The House passed it, but they also amended it to allow 8th graders to compete in varsity athletics. That sends that bill to the governor. Senate File 2219 originally started as a 4-H and FFA absence exclusion. The House got rid of those specifics and instead requires school board policies to grant a student an exempt absence related to school-sponsored activities, programs, competitions, or projects, and then requires the policy to allow the student to make up any missed work. That was passed 85-8. The Senate concurred, sending it to the governor. House File 2752, Teach Iowa Scholar Grants. This changes eligibility. You wouldn't have to be in the top 25% of the class anymore. It requires 20% of those grants to go to special education teachers, 50% to go to teachers in districts below 1,000 enrollment. It was passed by the House and now is in the Senate Appropriations Committee. And then Senate File 2299, Community College Costs. This allows the superintendent or their designee to require a student or their parent, if they're a minor, to pay the district back if they fail a community college course or if they drop the course and their fees associated with that. The House amended the bill and passed it 62-31. It's back to the Senate. What's next? Property tax proposals. Senate File 2472 was passed by the Senate a while ago. It's still in the House Ways and Means Committee. House File 2745, which was approved by that committee, is on the House debate calendar. The governor's bills received subcommittee action in both House and Senate Ways and Means committees, but didn't progress further, and there's no consensus yet. Read the weekly report, especially about the 35% limitation on unspent authorized budget. That provision is in all three proposals, so we have concerns that if there is any consensus achieved, that one will make it through. So some advocacy actions will be required. Here's your list. Keep talking about property tax reform advocacy, especially save sustainability and the unspent authorized budget limitations with both representatives and senators. Explain why UAB is necessary and what happens with it if you have both declining enrollment and continued low SSA, and then a limitation that anything over that 35% is taken away from the district. Ask them not to punish districts for conservative budget principles, very similar to the state's budget decisions over the last decade. That UAB limitation becomes a use it or lose it decision driver. It kind of forces you to have increased cash reserve to pay for it. That's the opposite of property tax reform. And then some specific asks on those other bills hanging out there. Thank representatives for their changes to the student behavior bill, and although we still have a few issues, it's better. Just keep talking to your senators about those few issues. Ask the representatives to just say no to the ICE-JIT bill if it comes up. We're hearing good things about not enough support, but we want to make sure they remember that through the end of session. Ask senators to hit pause on charter school legislation, since expansion is happening at a record clip without these changes. The homeschool provisions just really look like another kind of a private school, and we have plenty of school choice without this expansion and without requirements for background checks or other safety things that we have in both private schools and public schools. This could set up some kids to be in unsafe situations. Stay close to your email and look for any calls to action that you'll have to make some contact to your legislators as the session closes down. And the governor has the authority to veto things in an appropriations bill, so watch for any of those calls as well. Thanks to our RSAI corporate sponsors. We appreciate their support and connection to rural school districts. Check out the corporate sponsor page on the RSAI website for more information about how to access their services. If you have a company or service that you think would be supportive of rural schools, send them our way. You can get so much information on our legislative webpage related to the 2026 legislative session. Click on that webpage for access to these videos, position papers, weekly reports, calls to action, and more. And check out this week's detailed written report for all the actions at the State House. Maybe by the time we see you next week, we'll know when session's going to end.